Hey there. So this video is just going to be one of our first times telling kind of wacky stories that happen to us as home inspectors. So we have some pretty interesting things that happen in the field, and we get to experience them occasionally. But I've become aware that lots of times other people outside of the industry wouldn't ever expect a home inspectors to have to deal with some of the things that we see. So, quick overview, this story is basically about one of our inspectors very recently. It happened today. Um, he basically showed up to a property and found out that he wasn't welcome there, and then he had to figure out how to navigate that situation properly. So that's what this story is going to be about. And feel free if you have questions or if you've had similar stories, similar situations, I'd love to hear about them as well. But I'm going to go ahead and tell the story now. And I'm going to leave out property addresses, names of people, all of that good stuff, because uh, this scenario in our report, it sounds like may even end up in court. So this is just going to be using names that are kind of vague. So this morning, I got a call from one of our inspectors, and he tells me that he had showed up early to the inspection, like we always do. We always try to show up. We're usually the first people on site. So in this situation, he showed up early, saw that the house was occupied, and went and knocked at the door and let the person know, who turned out to be the tenant, let the tenant know that he was there to do the inspection. And we always do our normal, we have a script basically that we use that just lets them know what the process of the inspection is going to be like. And then he tells them, that he'll be inspecting the exterior first and moving on to the interior areas after that. And he finds out that the tenant doesn't want him there, or the tenant was aware he was coming, but the tenant didn't want him to be there, and basically asked our inspector if he was going to be needing to come inside the home. And the answer to that is, of course, yes. We do have to inspect the interior of the home, unless it was excluded. So that was kind of a weird interaction. A few minutes later, the property owner, the landlord, shows up, and the landlord was kind of shocked that the tenant was still there, because they had sent notice to the tenant more than 48 hours before, which is the legal requirement in our area. At least they have to give notice at least 48 hours before doing a inspection or a visit to the property. So the landlord had done that, um, but the tenant was still there and basically refused access to the home. So that's about the time that the our inspector gave me a call just to see what I thought we should do. And at the very same time that our inspector called me, he let me know that the property owner was on the phone with the local police department, asking them to come out there and get the situation resolved. So the inspector at this point is starting to feel a little uneasy. He said the tenant was pretty kind to him, considerate, but the tenant just did not want the property owner, the landlord, in the on the premises or in the house. So time goes by a little bit longer, and the inspector ends up deciding that, after the police not showing up for a while and the landlord being a little bit, a little bit off, because they were wanting the property to be vacant. After all this stuff going on, probably 30 minutes go by, and the son of the landlord lets our inspector know that, he says, "Hey, basically, whatever you find here in this report is going to end up in court. So just wanted to let you know that, because we have a court battle going on with the tenant here." The tenant's basically been a squatter at this point, and they've done a bunch of subpar alterations to the home, like poor roof installs and getting rid of the furnace and water heater, gas furnace, gas water heater exhaust, and it's just terminated into the attic, and doing all sorts of partial non-standard upgrades. So this is part of the reason why they're taking this deal to court, which we just found out the day of the inspection when we're already there. So basically, at this point, the inspector decides that it's not going to happen. So he's like, "Hey guys, give us a call when you've got the home vacant, and we'll move forward with getting the inspection done for you." And so he packs up and leaves and gets about 10 minutes down the road. And then our office gets a call from the landlord, and they say, "Hey, the police showed up. They got the tenant to leave, and now the home is vacant. So could your inspector please come back and finish the inspection?" So we call the inspector, and he turns around because we want to get the job done for these people. We try to not be the stick in the mud. We're trying not to cause a bigger problem than what has already been going on. So he turns around, um, and comes back to the property. He starts to pick up where he left off with the inspection, finishes the outside, and then finds out that goes to knock on the door. They have a locksmith come out and change the locks out. All this is going on while the inspector is doing the exterior inspection. And then they find out when they're about to go inside to do the inside part of the home inspection that there are unaccompanied minors. There's kids in the house by themselves. And at this point, we've gone against a couple company policies. One is basically if somebody cancels the inspection on us, at that, once we've already started the inspection, then normally we have an agreement. They sign that they pay a little bit of the inspection fee, and then when they book with us again, we'll credit them towards their next inspection, a bit of the fee that they paid. And so at this point, we were kind of waiving that because we're just trying to keep the ball rolling for the tenant. And now this is kind of policy number two: is we're not going to go into a house where there's unaccompanied minors just because we're not wanting to put our inspectors in a weird situation. And we don't want the minors to feel uncomfortable, and we don't want our inspectors to feel uncomfortable. So once we find out that these unaccompanied minors, the kids are in the home, then the landlord basically gets back on the phone with the police and goes on long conversations with them, letting them know that, hey, the adult tenant left, but they left their kids here at the house, and we're not able to finish the inspection now because there's kids in the home. So after a bit of time, the cops come back out to the house for their second time this morning, and they start talking through all the scenarios that could happen. Long story short, they're like, "Hey, we can't kick the kids out of the house. We don't have a place to send them. So we're going to have to just do this another day," even though the landlord gave proper notice, paid for the inspection, lined up all of these different parties to be out there. Um, they were just like, "Well, there's not much we can do for you." So everybody's getting ready to leave at this point. The cops are getting ready to pull away. Everybody's kind of getting ready to leave and write this off to a big inconvenience and needing to do it another day. Right at that time, the adult tenant returns. They see him pulling the street. So the cops go over to him and they're like, "Hey, sir, this isn't going to look very good for you in court if you're not allowing the landlord to do the inspection that they've already given you notice about. So we recommend that you let them go ahead and finish doing the inspection." And about around this time, our inspector kind of chimes in and he's like, "Hey guys, uh, if you're comfortable letting me do the inspection, maybe I go in and just do the inspection on the home, and the landlord can maybe stay outside." That way, because it seemed like the tenant was comfortable with the home inspector being there, they just didn't want the landlord inside, which is still kind of odd, but that's the situation. So it turns out the tenant ends up allowing the home inspector to go into the house and do the home inspection, and kind of lets him do his thing. It's still a bit awkward for the home inspector, as he's there because the guy's kind of looking over his shoulders. It's just a little bit weird with all the tense back and forth stuff that has gone on throughout the course of this inspection. But he ends up being able to complete the job, finally gets the home inspection done, and gets the whole situation taken care of after a couple visits from the police. But that was basically the kind of the summary of the story. But this is, just one of those things where we don't always think about all this awkward stuff having to a home inspector doesn't normally think about having to deal with all these different scenarios when they're thinking about just doing a home inspection. But this kind of stuff does come up more often than you'd think. We've got a lot of other interesting stories like this. I'd love to hear if you've got any stories of your own that you want to leave in the comments, or thoughts or questions. Go ahead and leave those there. I'll do a few more of these videos and share some other interesting stories, and we'll see if there's much interest in this, and could have a lot more to come. But yeah, thanks for your time. Hopefully you found that story to be interesting. Have a great day.